On a summer Sunday in 1969, two American pilots climbed down a ladder. They stepped out onto the dusty, gray soil and instantly became the most famous men alive. They were walking on the moon. Back on Earth, TV viewers watched black and white images of these first steps in hushed wonder. The journey to the moon had seemed an impossible challenge. To get there, American engineers had designed a machine more complex and costly than ever before, and blasted it into space at the top of an enormous, fizzing, fiery rocket. On July 20th, 1969, NASA achieved a goal made by John F. Kennedy to successfully land and return a person to and from the moon. On that day, Neil Armstrong and two other pilots became the first people to take steps on the moon. That day will go down as one of the most memorable days in the history of the United States of America. On May 25th, 1961, President John F. Kennedy spoke before a special joint session of Congress and challenged the country to safely send and return an American to the moon before the end of the decade. President Kennedy's vision for the three-year-old National Aeronautics and Space Administration motivated the United States to develop enormous technological capabilities and inspired the nation to reach new heights. The space age spawned two outstanding space programs as a result of the hot competition between the United States and the Soviet Union. Both countries gave primary emphasis in their space efforts to a combination of national security and foreign policy objectives, turning space into an area of active competition for political and military advantage. The space race began in 1955. The Soviet Union had just launched the world's first satellite, Sputnik. Fearful of Soviet military control of space, the Americans quickly readied a rocket. The space race is important because following World War II, both the United States of America and the Soviet Union realized how important rocket research would be to the military. Both countries realized that a victory in the space race would show the world which country had the best science, technology, and economic system. The hot competition of the space race began quickly. At first, this charged political environment accommodated nothing more than symbolic gestures of collaboration. Only in the late 1980s, with warming political relations, did momentum for major space cooperation begin to build. Only right as the Soviet Union neared collapse, the general importance for the arms race and competition in space declined, allowing both countries to seriously pursue strategic partnerships in space. The space race will go down in history to be one of the most memorable moments the United States of America has ever experienced. After many years of experiments, test flights, and training, the Apollo 11 spacecraft was launched into space on July 16, 1969. The crew included astronauts Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins. The trip to the moon took 3 days. Upon arriving, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin moved to the lunar module, called the Eagle, and began their descent to the moon. There were some malfunctions and Armstrong had to land the module manually. On July 20th, 1969, the Eagle landed on the moon. Neil Armstrong stepped outside and became the first man to walk on the moon. With his first step on the moon, Armstrong said, "That's one small step for man and one giant leap for mankind." Lunar landing operations for the Apollo 11 crew officially began at 9:27 a.m., July 20th. When the lunar module pilot Buzz Aldrin climbed through a tunnel separating the command module Columbia from the lunar module Eagle to power on the lander. "Everything's going just swimmingly beautiful," Collins said over the radio to Mission Control. It truly was beautiful. Humans finally achieving an almost impossible mission set years ago by an extremely influential president. The space race would show the world which global superpower was more powerful. Both countries had previously proven themselves to be technologically advanced in the ballistic arms race. Now that both countries had nuclear power, they had to find another way to show off their power. Inspired by the Soviet Union's launch of the very first satellite, Sputnik, the United States jumped in on the action, readying their first rocket. The Soviet Union launched Sputnik to intensify the arms race to the greater matter, the space race, to show the world which country had political and technological control. Following the moon landing was a period of distraction. This was created by the moon landing. For years, people saw the United States of America as a victorious country coming out of the space race. While the people of the world were distracted by America's victory, bigger and better rockets were being developed. The large rockets enabled missions that helped us learn a lot about the solar system. Eventually, History unfolded and revealed that the short-term impact of the space race was simply to distract the people of the worldwide politics. While the space race was a very important piece of history in the United States of America, the race was all a part of the bigger matter, the Cold War. The Cold War was a technological and political battle between the United States of America and the Soviet Union. At this point, winning the space race would unveil to the world which global superpower was more technologically advanced. Although the Cold War eventually ended in the discombobulation of the Soviet Union, its political opponents had to put up with it for over 50 years. The space race provided a good method of decision-making on which country had the better technology. After the space race, the entire world was distracted from the Cold War and was focused on technology and space. The world saw the United States of America as the country with the better technology. The United States continued to be the dominant country between the two, eventually ending the Cold War completely. The space race ended up greatly impacting the Cold War and went down as one of America's greatest accomplishments ever in the country's history. If you take a look at how impactful the space race was on the Cold War, you can see how the ending was one of the most memorable days in the history of the United States of America. When you take a look at how influential the moon landing was on politics and technology at the time, you are truly blown away. When NASA achieved a goal set by President John F. Kennedy to successfully land and return a person to and from the moon, on that day, Neil Armstrong and 2 other pilots became the first humans to take steps on the moon. They instantly became the most famous men alive. That day will go down as one of the most memorable days in the history of the United States of America.